Those in favor of passing the February 2025 minutes as is, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, they are approved. I also want to mention that Commissioner Condor is on Zoom right now. He's at home healing up from some stuff. So he's with us, but he's on Zoom. And so when folks do come up to the microphone or to the tables, make sure you speak really closely into the microphone so he can hear. Next up, we have approval of the agenda. We do have some changes to the agenda. We are going to remove 9B, which is the request to adopt the Ocean Shore Vehicles access to at Manzanita, as well as 5D, which is the French Glen Corral, French Glen School District. So those two pieces we are removing. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of the agenda.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner Dewar.
I second.
Yeah, Commissioner Azumi in for the second. All right. All those in favor of moving forward with the agenda with those two pieces removed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, passed. So we will move forward with this agenda. Next up, we have public comment. So it looks like we have two folks in our audience today to provide public comment. Should we go ahead? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start with Ann Batzer. And we typically leave comment to 3 minutes. So if we can state our comments in that time, great. And it's good to see you again. Thank you. Come on up. Yes, please. And just bring the microphone close so we can all hear what you're saying.
Well, first I want to say thank you for your service to Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian, and also thank you for giving me 3 minutes today to talk with you. I really appreciate it. So I was involved with researching the effects on the survival of fish and wildlife and the safety of traditional users of the Upper Rogue River from Rogue Jet Boat Adventures commercial tours, which were operating out of Tuville State Park. As part of this effort, I asked your former employee, Chris Havel, if other state parks had relationships with private businesses. Yes, he said. I asked him for examples. He said, and this is a quote, "For example, a group might hire a birding expert to hike with them through a state park, or a yoga teacher might offer a class in a state park." I told him I thought this was very different from a commercial tour boat company who said they had 14,000 customers, not over the course of a year, but in one summer. In August of 2023, Chris Havel emailed me and asked me to take a photo of one of Rogue Jet Boat Adventures billboards in Medford. And I immediately drove the 12 miles from my home into Medford to take the photo, and I sent it to him. He thanked me and said it would be used by an OPRD task force who would be reviewing Oregon State Parks' relationships with private businesses. 6 months later, in February 2024, I emailed Mr. Havel asking if the task force had made progress, was there going to be any opportunity for community input, and was there anything he could share with me, a member of the public. He said the task force had not started its work yet. So then 12 months later, in the fall of 2024, I again emailed Mr. Havel, asking him the same questions about the task force. I heard from Director Sumption that Mr. Havel was out on leave and that work assigned to this task force required more time. So now it's been 20 months since Mr. Havel first asked me to take a photo of one of Rogue Jet Boat Adventures billboards. And I'm just again here asking if there is an OPRD task force that's looking at redefining the relationship between state parks and private businesses. And is there going to be the opportunity for public input? And also, is there a timeline?
Thank you. And we will move on to our next public comment unless anybody else has questions or comments.
I presume that she will get a response on
I
this.
assume we'll get, yeah, and we'll get you a response to this from
Thank you.
OPRD staff.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You deserve more than a hello,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you're all coming.
And appreciate you.
Thank you for coming this morning and sharing.
We were out there yesterday, so thanks for the beautiful weather.
Yeah, yeah. I neglected to mention, we did go out to Tavell State Park and had a beautiful tour of the space, and it was lovely. We can understand concerns, so thank you. Bob, I think you are next. We have Bob Hunter, also from Medford, or I'm sorry, Jacksonville.
Yeah. We met in Medford.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak. And you can cut me off. I provided some materials, and I'll try to just sum and make the key points I want to. I'm also going to speak on the same subject related to Oregon Parks and Recreation Department's relationship with Rogue Jet Boat Adventures in the use of Tuville State Park. In the February, I think it was February 2024 meeting, I listened in on, and Commissioner Berger had asked Chris Hobble to provide a history of the relationship between the park and Rogue Jet Boat Adventures. And I followed up with Chris to make sure that he provided us with a copy if that was done. We never received a copy, so I presumed it wasn't done. So what I've provided here is a history as we know it about the relationship. And I think it's pretty important because frankly, a lot of people down here are really angry with parks over what's occurred out there. So it started back in 2014 when he had a 6-passenger boat. And I think he had some kind of, according to the press, some kind of conditional use permit. The next year in 2015, he had a 10-person boat, and it was as part of a pilot project, was allowed to use the park. But because of the feedback Oregon Parks and Recreation got, they decided not to continue the pilot project. And I gave a couple quotes, and there was a letter by Chair Sumption on that matter too. However, the next year, 2016, he's back in the park. And the justification at that point was, well, he's on Division of State Lands property. It's not owned by the park. And geez, we don't want him there, but he's there. And basically, he continued to use the park through 2017-19. In 2020, he was actually issued a conditional, special use permit to use the park. And then he invested in bigger boats. He had an 18-passenger, 25, and a 10. And he was running 3 boat trips 3 times a day, up to 159 people each day under that permit. Special use permits have criteria and findings. The findings that were made were not in line with the situation. You had to make findings that does not disturb park visitors, does not affect adjacent landowners, does not, and those were checked off as not. There was no hearing, there's no input, but parks already had a lot of input before and knew that the noise and the wakes and the danger and the speeds were causing problems. So, we finally caught wind that he was operating under a special use permit, looked at the criteria. A group of landowners had an attorney send a letter to parks saying it didn't meet the criteria. Why are you issuing a special use permit? And it expired in 2022, wasn't renewed, and we wanted to make sure it wasn't renewed. And that's when Parks was looking at concession and had a survey done in 2022. And
Bob, you have about 30 more seconds.
okay. Well, the main thing I'll say is they've been continuing to operate under, again, they went back to it wasn't our land. Then finally it was, they're just like any other regular park user. We can't tell them no. So if someone who has 14,000 customers come through in a summer season and they're paid customers, don't need a permit. I think that's a gross misinterpretation of your rules. And that's what they said. Chris Hobble indicated to me, well, they're kind of archaic and kind of old, but, you know, because no money is actually changing hands in the park, well, we can't do anything about it. You know, people pay online, come down and get on the boat. Anyhow, there's some other problems. I don't know what's going to happen with next season. That's why I just wanted to alert folks, because it's still an issue to many, many people. At the end of last year, they actually moved their docks to county property under the bridge, but the customers still park there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your concerns. And as mentioned before with Ann, we'll get back to you with a response. Thank you very much. You know, I missed doing introductions at the beginning. I just got so excited about our meeting. And I think that would be really helpful is to go through and give introductions. So if you wouldn't mind, Commissioner Grasdy's kicking us off and letting us know where you're from.
I'm Steve Grasdy. I'm commissioner from the east part of the state for about 3 more hours.
Short timer.
We can make it 5.
I'm Melissa Cribbins. I'm Commissioner for District 4 and live in Coos Bay.
Vicky Berger, Commissioner from the Salem area.
Commissioner Hill from the Roseburg area.
Lisa Sumption, Director of Oregon Parks and Recreation Department.
I'm Betty Izumi, the commissioner from the Portland area.
I'm Doug Durr. I'm the commissioner for Congressional District 1 and kind of representing the coast. My last meeting, although I'm told I'm still commissioner till the last day of May. So, I don't need that.
I'm Steve Shipsey and I'm counsel to the commission.
Yeah. And then we have Commissioner Condor online. I don't know if you want to say a few words, Joel.
Yeah, Commissioner Condor, and I represent the central part, the Cascade Range.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. We're going to move on to the director's update. So Lisa, what you got for us?
I'm looking over at Katie. She's gonna come do the ledge update. We'll tag team it. It's probably changed since we wrote this anyway.
I think it's updated, but we'll see. Let's see if I can get a little thing to work. So Director Sumption, Chair Hill, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with the legislative update. And then
Sarah.
here we go.
Her eyes really close.
Go to Zoom first and then.
While Katie's getting that going, our Capitol State Park staff were recognized on the Senate chambers on the floor. They had considerations where they brought them in and thanked them for their work and their service. And so they got to spend a little bit of time with Senate President and got to take some pictures. It was during the Cherry Blossom Festival. So it was a very, very special day for them. Mm-hmm. That's what the picture was from. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So yes, director's update. This first photo is the Senate President with our State Capitol State Park staff were honored on the Senate floor, and Senate President was happy to share a map of all of the state parks that he has visited so far with our State Capitol State Park staff after they were on the floor. So thought you would all like to see how proud he is of the parks that he's visited, which is kind of a fun thing.
That'll be Betty.
Game on. My math's better.
You'll get done before him.
So just generally, this is the long session. So there is an unlimited number of bills. There is just on a fascinating note, bill that would limit the number of bills that legislators can introduce, which could be interesting since there were a lot introduced by certain legislators this year, but over 3,000 introduced. We're tracking over 250. After the first deadline that passed, so the first chamber deadline has passed, there are still 160 that we're tracking that are active. Sunny Day is June 29th. The second chamber deadline is May 30th. So we made it through the first chamber deadline, and now the next relevant deadline is the end of May. For our agency bills, we had 3 proactive agency bills that you all approved as the legislative concepts moving forward. The first is the employee address confidentiality bill that allows our, it was modified so that it would allow our park rangers and park managers to participate in a DMV program that substitutes their work address for their home address if they opt into that program. That bill has passed out of the House, and then it just yesterday was approved to pass out of the Senate Rules Committee and will be on the Senate floor as soon as it works through the process. So we're very positive about that bill moving forward. The second bill is the Ocean Shore Permitting Bill. This is the one that makes some technical changes to the ocean shore permitting process, creates a general authorization permit, and would allow permits, would create a fee in rule, would allow the commission to set fees in rule. That one passed out of the committee unanimously, but because it put fees in rule, went to the Ways and Means Committee. So now our work is to get it out of Ways and Means. It will likely be part of the budget process because it puts fees in a rule. Even though we have had that for a long time, we weren't used to it going to Ways and Means because it was in rule. That was where all of the bills that have anything to do with fees are going this session. So we'll work on that one. And we'll definitely ask if we need any support.
We had a special guest accompany us on that one in our budget bill. So thank you to Commissioner Berger for showing up and helping get those.
I'm now vested in this. Grant Rippey and I'm about to go down there to Ways and Means again.
Okay.
And move that puppy if you tell me when, because now Matt and I are totally invested in that. We had too much fun.
Well, we appreciate the support, and it made it go smoothly through the committee. Now we just have to get it
out of Ways and Means.
Out of Ways and Means. And then the final agency bill, we were calling agency efficiency. It is amended so that it would provide a full exemption to procurement the public contracting statutes for the agency that other executive branch agencies have to follow. So we would do procurement similar to Oregon Lottery, Travel Oregon, Oregon Travel Information Council. We would still follow a public process and have procurement rules, but we wouldn't have to follow the same processes that other executive branch agencies have to follow. That bill passed out of the Senate unanimously. So we received excellent support. It is now in the House Emergency Management, General Government, and Veterans Committee, and we're working to get a hearing on the bill.
Who's the chair?
Representative Tran, and she's newer, and so we're working to get a hearing.
Let me know.
Yeah. We will definitely utilize.
You're already on my list for tomorrow.
Support. We've talked to the co-chair because we did have a relationship with the co-chair, and her office was asking if we had concerns. So we don't have concerns, but just need to get it scheduled.
Just move it.
Yeah. So that one is high on our list of priorities to get moving. And then just the other bills that I had shared information about. I think we spoke quite a bit last time about a new ATV rulemaking that was introduced to change who would provide rules around sound level, changing that from DEQ to the Parks Commission, and then safety equipment requirements, changing it from transportation to the Parks Commission. That bill passed through all of the process and was signed by the governor on March 19th. It included an emergency clause. So it is effective now, and the prior rules are no longer in effect. So you will see later in the agenda a request for temporary rules.
We did get kudos for being the first agency to have a bill in effect that we didn't know about.
Yeah. That was not our bill, but
like, okay, can we have some emergency rules?
It's I mean, it makes some sense that we have the knowledge and knowledgeable staff and work with those communities and can help to guide that process. And it makes sense, but
But I think
It was definitely not
law
our
enforcement and ODOT have concerns that if there's not rules, they won't be able to enforce them in the season.
Yeah. And then the next bill is an increase in RV registration fees. Oregon Recreation and Park Association is leading this effort. It had a hearing in the Joint Transportation Committee. It currently includes both an increase in the RV registration fees and a fund for abandoned RV disposal. There's some thought that maybe that will be split off to try to encourage one part of it, so that to encourage the increase in the registration fee to go forward. We'll see how that moves. Special assessment for historic properties. This is an restart of that program, and it would just be for commercial properties, and it did pass out of the House, and so it's now in the Senate revenue. It's the program that OPRD operates. It's the program sunset in July of last year. This would restart the program. We're still currently operating the program because it had a 10-year operating window. So participants were still in the program. We still have the staffing, so it wouldn't be hard for us to continue the program. And it would just apply to commercial properties if this bill were to pass. Recreational immunity has good traction. This would take the bill that was passed in the 24 session for a temporary fix from the prior issue and make it permanent. So it would add walking, biking, and running to the definition of recreation and make that a permanent change. It passed out of the Senate, and it has a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow. Tomorrow. And then Senate Bill 565 is a new bill, 565A, that was introduced by Senator Anderson. Initially, it would have asked the agency to study campgrounds on the coast, but the senator was amenable to amending the bill. It currently would require OPRD to study financial sustainability for the agency and report back to the legislature about ways to become a more financially sustainable, revenue opportunities and options. And then it would also transfer the Capitol Mall area back to DAS as a requirement, so that we would no longer have the responsibility for doing the operations and maintenance of the Capitol Mall area. It passed out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee and is in Ways and Means. And then finally, Senate Bill 929 would dedicate $100,000 in general funding and then require OPRD to spend $1 million of our dedicated lottery funding for the Oregon Coast Trail. And the $1 million would be per biennium moving forward. And that bill is in Ways and Means.
$1 million for us, or the $1 million for them, or both?
It would be $1 million of our dedicated lottery funding every biennium.
After they put in 1 million and we put in 1 million, then
no, they're going to put in 100,000 in general fund, and we would put $1 million in every biennium.
Every biennium out of our operating budget.
Oh, right.
Who introduced that?
It's Senator Brock Smith, and he's introduced it a number of sessions, and it goes back to maybe a mischaracterization or misunderstanding around a transportation bill, and thought that we received some bike and pedestrian transportation funding that we never actually received. So I think it's comes from a good place of wanting to have funding for the Oregon Coast Trail and help, but it just doesn't quite work for the way that we fund trails.
Have we met with them to explain that?
Well, over and over.
Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grasty.
Will you compare the $1 million to what we might spend in a typical biennium today? What might it look like?
I don't know if we have
One restroom.
Oh, yeah, we do. The new restroom and shower buildings that we're building are $1 million in a park.
So it would defer something we would be doing to maintain a park or to improve a park to put into a trail. And And right now, I didn't even know that we would have $1 million worth of projects identified on the Oregon Coast Trail. They're just not there yet. Is that fair?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So.
Best
so-
of intentions, we just wouldn't, even if we had the money given to us, we wouldn't have the ability to make that kind of investment.
All that makes sense. So what do we spend today though on the trail? Couple $100,000, 50,000? What might it look like today?
Dennis? Yes. So Joel can hear you too, please.
One of the ways that we articulated it in the committee was saying that it would dedicate all money that we spend on other trails to just one specific trail, and it would kind of restrict our money, our spending in other areas. But
Commissioner Hill, Director Sumption, it's hard to answer the totality question because each management unit up and down the coast actually spends some money on the maintenance, clearing timber that went from the blowdown on the north coast, where we send staff from all of the other parks to come up and help. And so there's some kind of residual cost from just staffing levels, which would be a lot. And then we contract with some of the different trail maintenance organizations to help as well. So I would think that if I combined all 13 management units, it may come out around $500,000 total. And so, but that's operational costs, not project costs themselves. Some of the things that I think of if we end up doing this one would be that we need to start creating bivouac camps up and down the coast for just the through hikers and not for like just day users. So, but that plan's not in place where we could start implementing something like that yet. Thank you.
But this would not in any way solve the connective issues that are hampering this Oregon Coast Trail. These are issues really that we don't have control of.
Right.
Yes, most of the gaps are with ODOT.
Yeah.
Right.
Privately held.
Right, privately held, ODOT, et cetera. Well, I have questions and thoughts, but I think it's premature to express those, and I won't be on the commission once this becomes, if this becomes
I don't think it's going anywhere.
an issue, but yeah.
There will always be ongoing trail maintenance.
Yeah, I understand. I guess my thoughts are, maybe there's some creative way to relate this to ongoing maintenance issues and infrastructure needs that support the larger park mission and the Oregon Coast Trail. And there's some way to make it all hang together if, in fact, we find ourselves in that scenario. But it's premature to be speculating.
Yeah, there's still some planning effort we need to put some effort into to help us get the logistics of how often we put a bivouac camp in, and then the kind of standardization of those and where there's restrooms and where there's not, those kinds of things. So thank you.
Right. And the staff, again, just have such a detailed sense of those opportunities and the challenges. So I think that if this comes to pass, there'll be some staff time ahead to try to sort out what those opportunities may be. Yeah, thank you.
And we'll have to bring forward what cuts and reductions we have to make in our budget to accommodate it.
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And then just because we had shared last time a couple of other bills, that two that did not make it past the initial deadline, there was a Parks for All that would have provided free day use and significant discounts to camping. That one did not move forward. One that would have provided free camping for everyone over 65 did not move forward. And then there is one that's still, because it's Senate rules, the deadlines don't apply in Senate rules. So there is still a bill that would change who appoints the DEQ director and the forestry director from a commission to the governor. So just putting that as a flag, since you appoint the OPRD director, which has not been proposed at all, any changes there. So that is all I have, unless there are any questions about things that are happening legislatively.
Hang in there.
Yeah.
Like June 29th.
Thank you for all your work. All right, moving on to 3C, best practices, also with Katie.
Let's get that one up. Is it still sharing? Okay, good. So this is a just the adoption of the best practices from the workshop that we had yesterday. So maybe I should start with Director Assumption, Chair Hill, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 3C, best practices. This is a follow-up from the workshop we had yesterday to adopt the best practices report that is from July 2023 to June 2024. As we discussed yesterday, this is a requirement for all boards and commissions that appoint their executive director. So in your packets, I put the best practices report from the survey that you all took. And then you will need to take action to adopt the answers that you have here. We received, unless there's anyone who wants to change any answers. These were the ones that we had received. We have meet or exceed on all, with a couple of not sures that we did go through in the workshop, and I'm happy to answer any questions on any of the measures.
Commissioner Izumi.
Yeah, I can't remember all of my responses, but I think that I might have been the person who wrote not sure, just not being sure of, these various points. But after yesterday's workshop, I'd like to, if that is me, I'd like to change my response to exceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Katie and I were talking about it last night. Not sure is still yes, which I mean, so it's totally okay. It's more important that you know where we are.
And we added the not sure. We used to not have a not sure column. And I think it was me, actually. I first started the commission and I was like, I don't think we met it because I don't remember talking about that. But we added the not sure column last year based on, frankly, the new members that aren't sure about all the various practices. So it's totally okay. And it's part of the conversation. Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So knowing that one commissioner hadn't filled out his reports, does it now include all of the commissioners?
Yes, it will. The one in your packet does. That is very good. Yes, good point, because I did not update the slides. Thank you for noticing that. So the ones in your packet does, and if you are ready to adopt it, I can make those changes in the final action and make sure that the one that we have is the one that's in your packet. So not what you're seeing on the slide.
I'll move approval of the one in our packet.
I'll second.
Great. We have a second from Commissioner Dewar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no. Hearing none.
Great, thank you. And we did appreciate the conversation, and we'll take notes back for areas of improvement on the onboarding and outreach. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hill, if we can, back to A, I'm going to have Joe come up really quick because there's a couple of things this week that we're like, the commission really has not been updated on a few things that we're doing. So Joe, if you want to come up and have some struggle time with me as we talk a little bit about financial foundations. So we asked Joe a couple of weeks ago, she would step up into a role and actually provide a little bit more policy level support to the director's office and the executive team, because with all the financial stuff we have going on, just keeping things moving, and with Chris leaving, it's like I need somebody that I can make sure is keeping all the balls in the air, because there's a lot of them right now. So legislative stuff is happening, and then we've also introduced something we're calling in the organization financial foundations, where we're literally looking at what are our processes for our buy decisions, because we've done everything, you've done everything you can on the rate side of it, which is our only tool right now and it's like we can't just talk about revenue, we actually have to talk about expenditures. And do we have the muscle memory to be practicing how we buy things, how we make our decisions, and get consistency around that? So we've launched a project called Financial Foundations, which will be separate from, you saw this financial study bill, whether there's a study bill or not. That would then allow us, and we're going to do this either way, create a work group that will it will include a couple of you and some legislators that are very interested. And then we're still trying to work on what that makeup is to have that group come together and talk about future financial decisions or revenue opportunities or different ways to think about it. So we're hoping to bring in some more business-minded folks into that conversation, and then report back to the legislators with what those recommendations would look like. What we don't want to do is what's happened in the past where there's been legislative work groups that talk about like, let's add 5 cents to the bottle bill, or let's do, you know, those are going to go nowhere. So we need things that are going to be specific to Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. We knew this was coming, like, you know, the perfect storm happened, right? The 12 to 25% happened, COLAs, all those things all happened at the same time. So it happened a little bit quicker than we anticipated after just recovering from the pandemic. So during that time, we had asked Secretary of State when they were doing their risk assessment if they could look at our governance and help us better understand how we could have a more solid financial future. And then magically, they popped up this year and said, you're on the top of our audit list. It was like, oh, that was 5 years ago. So now it's all of that is up in the air. So Joe is the liaison right now with Secretary of State. They're actually scoping it out. They've been meeting with staff from every part of the agency, better understanding what our portfolio looks like. I think they're a little overwhelmed at how big our portfolio is. They're like, you do what? Like, that's yours? Your SHPO, your ATV, you have OSHA tour permitting. They're a little overwhelmed in the moment. So I think we're probably a couple weeks out before we'll have a better scope of what the audit will be. Ideally, the audit would be done and our recommendations hopefully would somewhat line up and we'd be ready by February, but they haven't started actual work yet. So sometimes that can be a year and a half. So I don't know what that's going to look like. They keep asking weird random questions that we're like, I don't know where they're going to go. But Joe keeps bringing it back into the center for us. What am I missing there, Joe? Those are 2 big.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and members of the commission. My name is Joni House. I'm a policy advisor. And like Director Sumption has said, that really does capture the essence of the strategic financial sustainability that we're trying to approach. It's a multi-pronged plan. So the Financial Foundations Initiative is that internal approach. We're looking at our own budgets. We're discussing strategies. We're looking at it from a multi-region, multi-district, and multi-management region, and bringing in all of our different components and starting to look at our budget as a whole rather than divide it up into all of our different properties or divisions. And in this way, we can see that every time we save money with the budget that we have, it all goes towards our savings pool. And it also is an opportunity to engage all of our staff in looking at what are other places doing where it's making more sense. Where are some areas or properties that maybe aren't being utilized to the maximum way that we could either generate more revenue or look at where we're maybe having some expenditure gaps. So it's been an interesting conversation to start. Generally, people get a little nervous when you start talking about budgeting and what their own personal budgets can look like. But it's been a surprising and energizing experience where we have just concluded our 3 region all-staff meetings, 4 including our central office all-staff meeting as well. And everybody has been pretty excited about the potential for generating some creative new ideas, some flexibility that we may be able to see after the session, and where we can make some improvements. So there has been a lot of great things and ideas coming in. We'll be pulling all of that. That's that internal part. And as Director Sumption has mentioned, the external part has a couple different components with the Secretary of State's audit and then the potential study bill work group. And all of those recommendations, along with the internal recommendations, is going to help feed us into the pursuit of our strategic plan. So this is a DAS required strategic plan. We'll have a draft for you. That's also the same draft that's going to be submitted to DAS in June. So we'll have a little bit of time to be able to make some changes before the final. But that strategic plan is something that we'll continue to update.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Just can't wait till June.
Sorry. Some answers at that point. All right, we are going to move to agenda item 4, the budget, and we have Rebecca going over the lottery forecast with us, and she's on
online there. Hi, Rebecca.
Good morning. So good morning, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Rebecca Jasso, Financial Services Director for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Today, I'm going to be talking about item 4A. This is an informational item on the lottery forecast. The March forecast was released on February 26th. This forecast actually had an increase to the current biennium, the 23-25 biennium of $2 million, which was a decrease from the December forecast, but overall an increase from the beginning of the biennium. So we started out the end of session last biennium at 137.5, and we are now at 139.5. So a little bit of an increase on the current. The 25-27 biennium, however, is down. So it was down 2% from the agency request budget and down 3% from the governor's recommended budget. So we're looking at a decrease in 25-27 of about $4.9 million. And that's all reflected on the chart that's on the brief for you. The June forecast will be released in May, on May 14th. And this is the forecast that the legislature is going to finalize all state agency budgets on. So we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens with the next forecast. There is a lot of, when you look at the economic forecast and that was presented back in March, they are seeing a lot of downward sales. There was some kind of an issue with unclaimed prizes, which they seem to have, they think they've fixed. But they're showing they expect a decline by $11 million in 23-25 and $38.1 million in 25-27 for the overall lottery funds. So we'll be adjusting LAB based off from that December forecast. Any questions?
I don't see any, Rebecca. Thank you for that grim news.
Sorry about that. So Courtney is now she'll be the next up, and she's going to give you an update on the 25-27.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
Hey.
Hi, Courtney.
Welcome. Hello. Let me go. All right. Can everybody see that?
No, we cannot.
Oh, share.
There we go.
No? Okay.
Well, there it is. Yep. A little delay, but it's there.
Okay. All right. So, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission, my name is Courtney Zarazef. I am here today to talk about agenda item number 4B, which is going over the budget update and kind of where we're at right now, and giving the update from the last time I came, which was a little bit more doom and gloom. And this time we have some more hope to bring to you. So let me make sure this is going forward. There we go. So really what we're going to talk about is change in fees update, just kind of review where we're at right now, the impact that those have had that we've seen so far to date. We only have about a quarter, the first 3 months, so Q3 of this biennium to see, or of this fiscal year to see what impact it's had, and we'll keep tracking that, but we'll go over what we've seen so far. And then also some just interesting comparison data from previous fiscal years that we thought might be interesting to review. So just real quick, our overall change in fees, we changed our increase in overnights. We went from added $3 for tents, $4 for RVs, and $5 for cabins. One of the things we have realized and also added is to do a very small annual increase in fees will help the sustainability of our revenue for parks overall. And we think will be less of an impact for customers as they're coming in, as opposed to doing these bigger fees at one time. So that will also start this fall, is a small increase once a year. The day use, we also changed from $5 to $10, and we are currently in the mix of adding some more fee parks. So that will be coming shortly, but hasn't been impacted quite yet. And then lastly, we have out of state. We increased 25% surcharge for all sites. The next thing I thought would be helpful to review. So last time we talked, I came with we are at about a negative $30 million, or we were at ARB, at the agency request budget, from the revenue that we have coming in to the operating fees or operating expenses that we spend. And that difference was about negative $30 million. And that was the impetus for raising a lot of our fees. Since then, all of these are listed at GRB. So since then, we have some CFO analyst adjustments. We had some adjustments that needed to be made from the governor's office that added a little bit more into the margin here. We also had the lottery fund adjustments. As Rebecca just mentioned, this will come back out, but this is listed at GRB. We expected about 1.5 million more for operating funds. But really kind of the meat of what I wanted to show is this potential add for our overnight revenue fees. This is mostly the 25%. We got the additional $3, $4, and $5 increase in fees at our agency request budget. So this is really showing that extra 25% for the surcharge and a few other nuanced changes as we updated our forecast. We're expecting between an $11 and $13 million increase for next biennium. Also, raising our fees to $10 from $5 to $10, we're expecting an increase of $5 to $7 million, which puts us closer to $9 to $5 million, kind of in the red. We have some things coming up that I'll show that I think will help close that gap. But I've given a similar presentation at all of our all staffs. And I always like to pause for a minute right here, because I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the numbers. And I think this is something to be proud of as an agency, to just, we came in at agency request budget, and we're a little bit at a scary or unsure point. And I think this is something it is hard to move this fast in 6 months. And it takes a lot of wheels moving together and a lot of decisions to be made. And I think it's something to be proud of, to be in a space where we're moving towards a much more sustainable budget, not only for this coming biennium, but other bienniums going forward. The financial foundations piece is also a big part of that. But just a pause to be a little proud of ourselves and give ourselves a pat on the back for how much we've been able to move in that.
Thank you, Courtney. We do have a question from Commissioner Steve.
So, Courtney, you got a lot of numbers on the screen. Are those, am I correct? Those are millions of dollars?
Correct, yes.
See how much we reduced, though? See how much we did?
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty, for that question. Yes, these are millions. I tried to simplify it because there are a lot of numbers here. Any other questions before going on?
I don't see any. Courtney, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we started, so now we're kind of at this, what do we do now that we're at this -9 to -5, and with however lottery goes, we might be a little bit more or less there as well. But what do we do going from here? So some of the things the budget team has been working really hard on, as well as the executive team, is looking at adding more day use fee parks. So how do we start to objectively look at what makes sense to add fee parks, and also just the logistics of adding them and the cadence of adding them going forward. So that's one of the things that we're talking about now. The other thing is we put together these forecasts we don't know what we don't know. So as we're getting more data in, we're going to adjust our forecast going forward, and you will hear that. I have an example of that in just a minute, but we will continue to adjust them and notify you as we're getting more information. We'll also do some scenario planning around the annual.
Courtney, we have a little bit of feedback on our end. I think we're just pause for a second.
Doug's trying to fix it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, just one more moment.
Thank you.
Can you try talking one more time?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's still feed. Yeah.
Is it?
It's not, I don't think it's you. We've just got a lot going on in the room, and it acts up it just wants Doug to give it attention.
I see.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, try talking now.
Can you hear me now?
No.
No.
I think it's on our end,
Yes.
so we're working on it.
Okay, no problem.
All right, try talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, actually kind of keep talking if you will.
Okay.
How's the weather there?
What a beautiful day we're having right now.
We'll struggle time with technology, right? Keep talking.
I'm talking. I feel like the Verizon Wireless. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, right.
Bringing that back.
Is it doing it on me as well, Lisa?
Yeah, it's coming from you too, Joel.
I think it's
Yeah, because I'm hearing Courtney just fine. I don't hear any feedback.
Doug, can we just try turning this one off? That one off? It seems like, oh, they both are doing it? Okay.
Would it help if I went out and came back in?
No, it's not you. It's
Okay.
on our end. I think it's our connection with our speakers.
Okay.
It's not you, it's me. Boy, I've
you,
heard that from former
I feel like
government.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, just a couple.
Yeah. All right, how about now? I don't know.
Doug left the meeting and is coming back.
Okay. They're off mic, so I can't hear them.
Yeah, they haven't joined again.
Okay, we can hear you perfectly now.
All right,
Oh,
Tracy
great.
and Courtney, thank you for your patience.
No problem. Thank you for notifying me. So we had talked about, so we will update forecasts as we get more data. We're also starting some scenario planning around the annual passes. So we have not updated the annual passes yet. Right now, it costs $10 for the day and $30 for an annual pass, $50 for a 24-month pass. So it is a heck of a deal right now to get an annual pass and a 24-month pass. We'll start looking at different scenario planning on what that could look like in the future. And then also, like both Joe and Director Sumption talked about with the Financial Foundations initiative that we're implementing throughout parks, and as we're talking to managers, especially as we're going through the allocation process for next biennium, really looking at increasing our beginning balance. That won't be a long-term solution, but it will help to give us a runway as we're figuring out some more of these long-term solutions. And then one of the key things we're really looking at is taking a long-term outlook going forward. So if we do all of these things, it will help in the short term, probably for 2-3 biennium, but we'll probably be in a similar situation 3 or 4 biennium from now. So really taking a long-term outlook, looking at some property evaluation, reviewing leases, expanding campgrounds and what that might look like, and then partnerships and concessionaires. Any questions about this piece of it before going forward into some cool scenarios or some cool data?
I don't see any. Go
Okay,
ahead.
great. So one of the things I thought would be helpful to share is some data that we had actually coming out of Silver Falls. So our Silver Falls manager, Chris, contacted the budget team and shared some information that he had and some comparables that he had put together from January of 2024 and January of 2025. And so these numbers are looking at the revenue coming in 2024 and the revenue coming in 2025. Also, the numbers down below are the car counter. So how many visitors we've had in both years in the month of January. It's hard to compare these two for a few reasons. For one, we had beautiful, beautiful weather in January, so we had a lot more people coming out. But also we just raised our rates. So of course we're going to see more revenue, but what does that look like in an actual comparison to one another? So we took this and tried to look at the purchase rate of day passes, of day parking passes. We saw in 2024, the purchase rate was about 30%. We don't ever expect this to be 100%. So I want to make sure that part is clear too. People have annual passes, 24-month passes. We have employees going in and out. Sometimes people just drive in and take a picture and leave, so they're not going to pay for a daily parking pass. So we don't expect that to be even close to 100%. But we did expect to see, once we raised our rates, for this to potentially go down a little bit. And that's what we built our forecast off of. And we actually saw that it went up. So we were at 30% in January of 2024, and we saw that go up to 40%, an increase of 10%, which to us data people was very, very exciting and also a little bit unexpected. So one of the things we do with this information is we really use it to challenge our own assumptions and how we built our forecasts. We will continue to look at this. This is just 1 month's worth of data. So we'll continue to look at this information. I have a little bit more in the next slide. And we will adjust our forecasts as needed based on as more data comes in. And then lastly, by looking at information like this, we're able to potentially discover some opportunities from park to park and really look at, is one park potentially doing something different than they were at this time last year? And it's a way to measure if whatever they're doing is successful or not. It's also a more comparable way to see the impact of the $10 increase. Any questions?
Commissioner Grasty.
Really, for the commission, I think there's an incredible opportunity that we're missing in Southeast Oregon. I think after having spent 8 days in the southeast corner of the state, the usage by the by the Boise Valley folks is unbelievable. I was down where we take out the rafts for 45 minutes and 11 side-by-sides, all out of Idaho, came down that road. Mm-hmm. It's huge, and I think we need to exploit it.
Now you're talking my language.
Yeah, I love this kind of analysis because and I hope you'll come back on this again. January was wonderful weather. Nobody knew we raised their rate. By the time you have driven to Silver Creek, you're going to pay whatever the parking fee is they're charging. The question is, are you going to come back next time when you remember that you just got charged double? So, I don't know what all the factors are, but I do know by the time you've made up your mind to go to Silver Creek and have driven in there, you're going to pay the fee they asked for.
Right.
But the question is, are you going to come back and pay it again is a more important question.
Well, we did see, Courtney, why don't you talk about the increase in our annual passes that we saw at the same time period?
Yeah, those are the people that know.
Yeah.
Those are the people that read the paper.
Left Silver Falls and were like, I'm getting an annual pass.
Yeah.
thank you both, Commissioner Grasty and Commissioner Berger. And I did not pay Commissioner Berger to say that, but it was a great setup for this next slide. So that said, we started to look, we have more information now to look at January through March. So the first quarter of the calendar year, third quarter of the fiscal year, to be able to compare these two. So we actually saw overall, these are all of the parks combined. We saw a 58% revenue increase in just between the daily parking passes. We saw a 37% increase in the 12-month passes and a 13% increase in the 24-month passes. So it is, people are taking advantage of the annual passes as they're coming in. We see this is a big jump. We normally see a very flat line. It's very predictable for the annual and 24-month passes. So we're seeing a big jump in that. We're also seeing people pay the daily parking pass.
And at the same time, we had really good media coverage because we had our visitation numbers out there. And so we had a lot of really good media support talking about our budget, our financial crisis, where we're heading, the works you guys were doing. So it's all, the timing couldn't have been better for what you did.
And this is an overall 41% increase in revenue. And then looking at just the daily purchases, it is about a 20% decrease in the daily purchases, but that percentage people are making up for it in the annual and 24-month pass. I think what will be interesting going forward is to see if that continues, and then if the 12 and 24-month passes become we will be more reliant on those than we have been in the past.
Great, Courtney. I don't see any questions.
Okay. So that is all I had. I just had this kind of look back and just overall summary of it, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and we'll be happy in the future to come back and share more updates.
Courtney, can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
No, the next one, back to the first slide. Back further. The very first slide you presented. I had a question there and I didn't ask it, and I should have.
The very first one.
One before that one. Sorry, that slide.
Oh, this one. Yes.
2025 lottery adjustment, you have a 2.47 increase, but that's not the latest forecast, is it? Or
correct.
Correct.
Yes, Commissioner Berger, thank you. This is at governor's recommended budget. This is what went through. So with the updates that Rebecca provided, that will go back down. But what will come through in the legislative approved budget is the next forecast.
Okay. So that number is kind of on shaky. We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Courtney, I don't see any questions from the commission. Thank you so much. Your presentations are so clear and helpful to the group in terms of better understanding all of this stuff. So thank you very much for all the work you put into that.
Thank you so much, Chair Hill.
Okay, moving on to 4C, the Director's 2024 Travel Report. This is going to be presented by Stephanie.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of Commission. For the record, my name is Stephanie Coons. I'm the Deputy Director for Business Services. So I'm here today to report on Agenda Item 4C, which is the Director's Annual Travel Report for 2024. And this is an action item. So the Oregon Accounting Manual requires annual commission review of specific financial transactions for the director or the agency head. And then the review must be documented in the minutes. So attached, you should have a copy of the director's travel expenses. So the transactions would include travel, exceptional performance leave, and vacation payout. So in 2024, Director Sumption had no exceptional performance leave, and she had 40 hours of vacation payout. The travel information that you have on that list is pretty consistent with previous years, so there's not a lot of changes or anything that really stands out from it. So at this time, staff they're requesting approval from the commission for the director's 2024 travel.
Anybody have questions on this or comments?
I think it deserves a comment that we benefit by her status nationally within the organization. She's teaching, she's a leader recognized, and this, reflects in a budget item, but it's well worth it. And I also happen to know that she'd like to get out of some of that, but they don't have a lot of volunteers.
People stop blowing up.
No, but I appreciate that she is on the national stage and teaching others to be better than they are because she's that good. So I would move approval of this, and with the statement that in here is travel that I think we definitely are aware of and are pleased with.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the specific financial transactions per Oregon Accounting Manual for the calendar year 2024 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie.
All right, moving on to real estate. Agenda item 5. We have Matt Rippey up first for our draft real property policy. Ooh.
Like, I need a friend that has some IT experience.
Okay, that's all right. It looks different. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. For the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. I'm here today with action item 5A, which is adoption of the real property policy. As just a quick recap, this is an incorporation of disposition criteria and language into the existing and kind of recently adopted acquisition policies, so that we're working from a single policy rather than two. And I've taken the feedback from both the February commission meeting and then the workshop that we had yesterday, and was going to go through and review that today. So quick overview, I wanted to go quickly through the differentiation between policy and procedure, a little bit about the background for the disposition and acquisition policy, and then read through the 4 criteria for the disposition, and a quick review of draft disposition workflow or procedure. Quickly, I just want to go through kind of a differentiation between the policy and procedure. Policy really, in my mind, kind of sets the vision for the agency. It's really the agency's philosophy. And then the procedure itself is how that philosophy is implemented. It's almost, I think about it as like a checklist of things that we make sure that we do in order to ensure a property is moved out of the system or an easement is granted appropriately. One thing I did want to mention before we get into the criteria too, I know that disposition of parklands is a pretty sensitive topic. I know I've gotten a phone call. I believe Director Sumption's had a phone call. And I just wanted to make clear, especially in light of some of the financial outlook conversations that we're having as an agency, that this is not an attempt in any way to start moving property out of the system. It really is to give you all the guidance that you need to make appropriate decisions when staff come to you with a disposition. And again, that can be a transfer to another agency. It can be an easement. It could be a property line adjustment, anything like that. No. I'll get lost if I start talking while there's no slides. I just, in all transparency. Okay. Okay, quick background. The disposition policy that we're currently working from is from 1991. I believe that's in your packet, and it really reads as a procedure. And so, again, the idea behind this is to get some solid criteria out there for the commission to be able to use to make decisions. The acquisition policy, the most recent draft before 2023 was adopted in 2011. We went through a series of workshops over the last couple of years and adopted that in 2023. Again, the idea being that we bring this all together into a single real property policy. Okay, so I do want to go through and review each of the 4 criteria. First is mission impact. Real property disposition should not deprive the state park system of natural, scenic, cultural, historic, and recreational qualities of statewide significance. Considerations include, I'm sorry, but I do want to read through this. So I beg your forgiveness ahead of time. Real property being considered for disposition should not have natural, scenic, cultural, historic, or recreational attributes that are significant, rare, or lacking elsewhere in the state park system. Stable, like-minded partners who manage or are capable of managing properties that may be considered for real property transfers or exchanges based on their ability to care for and maintain the property. Consideration should include the department's historic use of the property and the impact that property disposition could have on public benefit, including access. Disposition of real property where compensation is less than market value, including transfers and exchanges, should include appropriate deed restrictions and reversionary clauses. The next criteria is strategic objective. Real property disposition should be consistent with long-range planning and strategically benefit the department. And the considerations include real property with less desirable attributes, so things like lower visitation, unintended public use, inadequate access to law enforcement, leading to staff or visitor safety issues, inefficient use of staffing resources. All of those things may be considered for disposition. Real property not required for access or consolidation of parks, trails, and greenways, necessary for legal or management issues, or do not provide a buffer to existing properties may be considered for disposition. Real property that does not meet the department's goals for extending or improving public service in the face of changes wrought on by human development, climate change, and epic environmental events, so drought, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, floods, and wildfires, may be considered for disposition. Real property that is important to department planning efforts should not be considered for disposition. If the department is considering a disposition of real property as part of an exchange, the department should determine if a disposition best leverages the opportunity and consider what other avenues are available. Third criteria is urgent opportunity. Prompt disposition or exchange of property allows for the department to leverage an opportunity that would otherwise be lost, and considerations include successful disposition or exchange is likely with minimal risk. Disposition can leverage something more desirable for the department and the public, and the likely outcome, if the department is unable to complete a proposed exchange, would result in the loss of a significant potential resource, natural resource, historic, etc., or property access. And the final criteria is engagement. Real property disposition responds to changes in public demand, including community impacts. Considerations include disposition or exchange of the property considers feasibility in terms of community support, property obligations, restrictions, or limitations, and department resources. The department may not have a development plan and/or management of the property may not be cost-effective or represents an unacceptable risk to the agency. Evaluation of known or anticipated community impacts, both positive and negative. Long-term public benefit may not be present. disposition of real property would not diminish an access or experience for an underrepresented population. And along with that fourth criteria in terms of public engagement, we also added, it's on page 7 of the policy under collaboration and partnership, item 2B. OPRD employees will work with collaborative partners to ensure that a successful collaboration will occur when the following elements are present. And we added under local support, compelling projects are those supported by the tribes, county, local communities, interested state and federal agencies, and that accommodate public use and access. And public participation is an integral part of real property transactions. So in terms of the criteria and incorporating that into the policy, that is where we landed. The next piece I was going to go through was the procedure steps, and I was going to do that in more of a generalized fashion rather than a detailed step-by-step. There are no questions before I move to that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grasty.
Indulge me if you would, and back up to the first page of 4 bullets. Yes. So the third bullet down, consideration should include the department's historic use. When I stared at that just now, is it the historic use or only the department's?
There is other language that talk even up above where it talks about real property being considered for disposition should not have natural, scenic, cultural, historic. So that hits on that part. This bullet point does talk more about, it's about the access so that we're not eliminating access is really what that
makes sense.
That one's for. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
All right. I think we can move on to the next.
Great. Thank you. So I just wanted to provide a quick overview of kind of the process that the agency uses when we're looking at disposing of property. Again, those criteria that we went through really provide the philosophy of the agency around it, but this is the step-to-step that the staff use to guide that process. The first is when we receive a proposal, it's an internal conversation of, is this something that the agency would be able to part with? Again, and this could be an easement, it could be transferring of a property, it could be a lot line adjustment. It's all of those things. Once we have that initial kind of internal conversation, a project manager is assigned, and we start doing a cursory review of that with our natural resource specialist, our archaeologist, our property folks to see, are there, at first glance, are there any issues that we would see with disposition of this property? And next, once all of that work has been done, depending on the answer, or depending on the outcome of the resource work, it would come to the exec team for yeah, we should move this forward, or no, we should not. If we determine not, then we'd circle back with the landowner and say, or excuse me, the proposer, with an answer of yes or no. If it's a, yes, this is something we can look into a little bit more, we go into a lot more in-depth review in terms of historic use, historic resources, archaeological resources, natural resource, visitor use, all of those things. Start identifying partners and stakeholders that we will want to engage with. Local government consultation, tribal consultation. We'll come up with an outreach plan, a communication plan. Again, if we feel that this is a property that, or a piece of a property that we may look at disposition of. Again, then we look even more in depth at, are there deed restrictions, grant obligations, leases or agreements that we have, and kind of continue down that path. More in-depth title and escrow review, appraisals if needed, and then we would bring that. Once we've done all of that due diligence, we would then bring that to the commission for an informational item, including justification via the criteria that we're looking at in this policy, and move on from there. So again, there's a list on the right-hand side that of all of the things that this would include. I think when we mention disposition, a lot of times what comes to mind is moving an entire park out of the system, and it's definitely a lot more than that. It would include exchanges, sale of property rights, easement, lot line adjustments, those sorts of things. With that, are there any questions or comments?
Go ahead, Commissioner Cribbins.
I have a question. I'm curious, and I did miss yesterday's work session, but how come you don't look at the deed restrictions and grant restrictions and all that a little earlier in the process before the community's engaged?
So I think with most of thank you for the question. For most properties that we have, our staff will know fairly quickly if there are deed restrictions. So that probably is going to come up a little bit quicker than it showed in the procedure review. Our property staff and our park managers, our district managers all know their properties quite well. And so it's in all likelihood going to come up before then. And it could be something that we could move up earlier in the process. It's actually not, I won't say it's not difficult to look up, but it's maybe not as difficult as it sounds. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
So when you have these criteria, at what point are they applied in the process? And how is that treated as like a weighing test? Because clearly no property could meet every single criteria.
Absolutely. Yes. So they're used kind of throughout the process. And again, when we go through the process of identifying a property, applying the criteria kind of as we go, that's why we use our natural resource specialists or our archaeologists, is to truth some of the criteria against that property and does it fit? And we would come to you with a justification around those criteria. Again, some of those, because it is in policy, it's much more vague language. And so there may be some challenging discussions and decisions in front of the commission. It's one of the things we talked about with, as an example, leaving in the term statewide significance. I mean, that really is up to the commission to determine whether a property is or is not kind of measured up to the statewide significance.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that, I hope that answers your question.
It does. I suppose I tend to get to the whole process. Exactly how does that work?
Yes. I didn't add the slide today because it was hard for me to navigate yesterday, but the actual flow chart that our real estate staff uses is in incredible detail. I don't know how many pages long it is. I tried to just do kind of a broad overview with those arrows. I would be happy to share that with you. It's on a separate platform. And so it was hard to kind of navigate and actually show it on the slideshow.
Didn't cooperate well.
It was very complex.
Commissioner Berger, did you have a question?
No, I'll defer.
Okay, Commissioner Grasty.
So I want to say thanks, and I'm going to make a comment that applies to a whole bunch of agenda items yet today. And I think you did a great job with this, but we in government over and over tend to believe that everybody in the world understands every acronym we use. And you did a better job here than some of our agenda items, but we need to make sure there's a simple way. I read some of this to my bride and she went, "What is?" about 4 times.
Yeah. She's back there laughing at you.
Back there?
Yeah, you can't see her. But...
She's done worse, so it's all right.
Yeah.
So it's, just a comment.
It truly is a great point. I think we've talked about kind of jokingly that it would be great to have a cheat sheet in your folders that had
all of
an explanation of some of the acronyms that we go through.
So I have to tell you, I tried to do that in 1999. It's impossible. It works here.
Yeah.
And you take that list to the next meeting you go to and it no longer works. So best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the impossible task.
Yeah.
Commissioner Berger.
Yeah. Matt, I saw the review interval 3 years. We have been working on this a long time. This is kind of the last piece of an incredible effort that has updated this policy you should have seen where we started. There is never, you can never anticipate, but it brings it back to the commission in a way that we can work with it and do our job, which is what we really need. We don't do procedure, we do policy. What is our policy based on? And this is the best answer we have right now of that question. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate how much work this is
Thank you.
and how glad I am to see it done before I leave.
Thank you.
I think we started this a few years ago, so it's
Oh.
actually really nice to get this piece
Yeah.
finalized and
Come on,
done.
over the line.
You know, as Commissioner Berger mentioned, it's currently set for every 3 years for review. So hopefully you guys can take some notes as we start to go through these
Yes.
disposition processes and figure out what steps don't make sense, if there's too much bureaucracy that we've
Absolutely.
included in some of this stuff to slow projects down. That's helpful feedback in the next 3 years.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll still be here.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, the one.
I did want to mention one. I think, like I mentioned in the workshop yesterday, knowing now what I know, or if I would have known then what I know now, I would have tried to do this all at once, incorporate disposition and acquisition 3 years ago. But I really appreciate the patience and guidance from the commission over the last couple of years, because I've learned a great deal. And I truly believe we ended up with a great product. To your question or comment about the 3-year review, Commissioner Dewar and I were just talking, and I mentioned it to Katie too. We can be a little, depending on how this works, we may want a 3-year review, but we can bump that out to 5 if we feel like things are going well. I think the adjustments that we might need to make in the future are probably going to be more on the procedural piece. But it'll be good to test drive it over the next couple of years to find out for sure. So thank you again to you all for the guidance.
Well, thank you, because it was a task that was never on your radar. And in that 3-year time period, while Matt has been learning more and more about real estate and how we process, we've also done free transfers with a very old antiquated policy. And it is very fascinating that each property introduces a whole different complexity of issues where it
right.
So that helped inform where we are, where I think we're in a much better place with the policy and the procedure being different.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dewar, did you have some comments or thoughts?
I do. I do. Being my final commission meeting, I will accept that I've been probably the most publicly dyspeptic about disposition issues over the last 8 years, and that in some ways reflected a desire to see some of these things articulated in the way they are. And I can just say that this current policy as proposed is just so many miles beyond where we were in 1991 that it really addresses so many of the different kinds of concerns that I've raised or that have been raised to me in the course of my time on the commission. And I just, again, I've had a lot of trust in this process all the way through because of my deep trust in you personally and in your staff that are working with you as a team. I can't say enough positive things about the team that has worked on this. And so, and thinking through the different contingencies and pairing it nicely with the acquisitions policy so that it is to some extent a mirror image. It also, of course, it creates a lot of general guidance that the commission can use to determine things like we had this discussion about local or regional significance as opposed to statewide, but to some extent, the way it's phrased is consistent with statute and consistent with our mandate and allows the commission to have that conversation about what meets that standard in our view. And so I am comfortable with this language, and it does address so many of those different things that have come up over the years when we've we've as a commission been able to talk about these things, but we didn't have the policy to articulate it. And so, but I do trust the commission going forward to make very good choices and have good conversations to use disposition sparingly and wisely, because I think it does have, it's a public trust. We have a high level of responsibility to make sure that when we do get rid of a piece of property, that we're taking into consideration the broad view, our responsibility to all citizens of Oregon, and factoring that in with our larger mission. So the commission will be able to do that, I think, going forward with this as a guidepost. I like that the communications role, the public outreach is so articulated in here, and I feel we work well with our immediate neighbors, but because of the nature of the sensitivities of disposition, to talking with people, making it clear statewide what we're up to, and again, I think you've mentioned even putting this policy online, so it's publicly visible. And if anybody has any questions before there are suspicions or theories about what we're up to, they have that policy very clearly in front of them. And that's going to solve so many problems going forward. Yeah. And so I appreciate that too, and that transparency. The only headache I have about this is that 3-year review interval, which, by the way, I think says 5 on page 10, which is why you and I kept going back and forth about 3 or 5.
See, I thought you guys landed on 5.
Yeah. And so, and that's the only place where I, at this point, have heartburn about that, because it has taken us
3
so long
years
to get here.
Yeah.
And I hate to think that we're going to immediately, the moment we approve this, launch into the next round of revision and review. I'd like to think that so much effort has been put into this, so much thought, such a meticulous process by staff, by you, by the commission, that we could let this kind of ride for a while, unless we detect a fatal flaw that needs to be adjusted. So I don't know if we have to actually amend that. I do think we have inconsistency between the dates on page 1 and page 10. Yes. We might want to think about that. Yep. But if we can sort of maybe keep the interval longer, with the caveat that if we detect problems, we can go back in and open it up if we have to. Because I just hate to think of staff having to go through all this effort continuously. And this is a pretty solid, this is reflecting the philosophy of the department writ large, some very careful considerations. So I'd like to hold on to this now as I leave the commission. We're secure now. I feel good. I can hold on to this. People ask me, what's going on with that disposition? I say, read the policy. It's online. Leave me alone. I'm retired. So I feel good about it. I just want to hold on to it now. So let's talk about that interval. Yeah. But other than that, I would move approval if it is appropriate.
Does anybody else have thoughts on the 3 versus 5 year deal? I mean, this is all under the assumption that if something big happens that we need to make some changes, we can do that.
There's nothing prevents us.
Yeah.
I would wholeheartedly advocate for 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that, you have to run this through a few times before you see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, to your points, and thank you again, to your points, it doesn't mean that we can't look at it in between now and then if something comes up, but it would save that larger review until then. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I would welcome it.
So could I move approval contingent on changing the review interval to 5 years?
Sure. So the action that we are going to take is adopting this disposition criteria with the one change of a review in 5 years. I need a motion.
He moved.
He moved. Second.
Okay, you have a second.
We've got a second from Commissioner Berger. All those in favor of approving this signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is a big deal.
This is a really big deal.
Thank you for all of this work, being so patient with us, wordsmithing. All right, I think we're going to keep powering through. Next up, we've got Jeff with Heceta Head Lighthouse area.
We're not touching the bike out.
Yeah.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission. I'm Jeff Walker, property agent for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Bringing forward agenda item 5B, information on potential acquisition of 1 acre parcel. Heceta Head Lighthouse State Scenic Viewpoint encompasses approximately 549 acres on both sides of Highway 101 in Lane County. The Heceta Head Lighthouse sits about 206 feet above the Pacific Ocean and is believed to be one of the most photographed on the West Oregon coast. Lands were acquired by the state park system dating back clear to the 1930s. The scenic viewpoint, located 12 miles north of Florence, offers hiking trails, marine mammal and bird watching, and other outdoor activities, and has welcomed state park visitors for decades. While working on another Heceta Head project in the immediate area, Oregon Parks and Recreation Real Estate Service staff recently discovered a 1 acre in-holding parcel that is owned by the Sioux Falls School District. This vacant parcel is located along Cape Creek Road, approximately a quarter mile north of the Cedar Head Lighthouse parking lot. The parcel is zoned park and recreation, which making it basically a non-residential lot, essentially a recreational only parcel. The parcel has recreational, natural, and scenic attributes. With OPRD owning the surrounding land, if acquired, this parcel would align with our park planning policies, eliminate possible management issues, and support the operation as state park land. Staff envisions this property fitting well with the OPRD park priorities. In conversations with the school district regarding the OPRD possibly acquiring the land, they did express interest in selling this parcel. Staff anticipates coming before the commission for approval to acquire the 1 acre parcel and holding in the near future. Thank you. Taking other questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have any comments or questions? Commissioner Dewar?
This sounds great. Do you perceive any downsides or problems with OPRD receiving this property?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Dewar. No, we do not. It's been real favorable from parks and from the school district also. Sharing some of this information with them already has received real positive. Actually, will help eliminate kind of possible future management issues, as I just alluded to. Right. And so really, it's a really good cleanup process for us to take part in.
Yeah, sounds outstanding. Yeah, thank you.
Who knew?
All right.
Yeah.
We need a motion. Oh, no,
it was just information.
Sorry, not yet.
Thank you, Jeff. This was really helpful.
Great.
Thank you for your work on this.
Okay, 5C, Fort Stevens VA Cemetery.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, my name is Ladd Whitcomb. I'm a property agent with OPRD. I've got a couple items for you today. The first one we'll be looking at is the addition to the VA cemetery at Fort Stevens. OPRD and the Veterans Administration have been working together for more than 6 years on coming up with some area that they can acquire so that they can continue to serve the veterans of the North Coast area. We have identified a 4.51 acre parcel that's been appraised. We've done our due diligence, they've done their due diligence, and it is being worked through the county right now to be made its own separate lot so that that can be transferred without doing a PLA, property line adjustment. And after I field any of your questions, what I'm asking for today is an approving vote for us to transfer that 4.51 acres to the Veterans Administration.
Looking for any comments or questions for Ladd? Seeing none, I think this is a pretty much a slam dunk. So let's go ahead and take a motion.
I'll move approval of the transfer to U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs and authorize OPRD director to sign all necessary instruments effectuating that transaction so that we can have a VA cemetery in the North Coast expansion. I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Great.
Thank you, Ladd. As mentioned, we are not doing French Glen Corral today, so that's been removed from the agenda. We are moving on to Wallowa Lake, also with Ladd.
Okay. Yeah, the last one I've got here is Wallowa Lake, an area that we have been, well, in an area where we have been leasing or managing property for Pacific Corps and using it as a park since somewhere around 1954. They're in a position now where they can sell that property to us. And just like the VA parcel, we've gone through all the steps. We've determined what they're going to sell to us. We've had it appraised, all of that. And then very, very recently, they realized they needed to keep their tail race area as under the restrictions of their FERC license. And so it has been resurveyed with that portion taken out. And we are to the point of we're waiting for the appraisal to come back and see what the new value is with that portion taken out. And the difference is right around 5 acres. So we expect that value to be similar or maybe a little less than the previous appraisal. The reason that I'm bringing it to you before I have that number is because this is part of, this is one of the 2 properties that we got additional limitation for. And that additional limitation is for this biennium. So this needs to be completed by June. And instead of rolling that into the June commission meeting, we'd be incredibly tight. And so I would ask, after any questions you have, that we could get an approving vote to transfer or to accept the transfer of the Pacific Core property at the appraised value. Any questions for me on the Pacific Core property?
Go ahead, Commissioner Grassi.
So I'd like to make the motion to approve the acquisition of the Pacific Core property and authorize OPRD director to sign all necessary instruments. And make one request. Nice presentation. Appreciate all the work you've done. But please, at the next meeting, bring some maps that are really clear. As you know, they were pretty confusing.
Right. Apologize for that. The only thing that I had that I could really get transferred over was surveyor maps, and those are 16 by 20, and we had to zoom them down to get a good idea. But yes, I appreciate that, and I do apologize. I was pulling those up.
I'll second.
Great.
And not pick on you for the maps.
No. What do you guys care?
That'll be Grassie's claim to fame.
I'm gonna look at the record.
Great. We have a motion and a second. And I just want to make it clear that we will have 2 appraisers providing a new value on this. So it won't
An
just
appraisal
be
and a review appraisal.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect. Okay, great. So all those in favor of approving acquisition and authorizing the OPRD director to sign all necessary instruments, effectuating the transaction, signify by saying at approved value. Appraised value.
Yeah. I would like that in.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. Thank you, lad.
Thank you.
Okay. Silver Falls with Alice and Claudia.
Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Assumption, and members of the commission. I'm Claudia Echeverria with Real Estate Services with OPRD.
And good morning. Good morning. Alice Beals with OPRD Real Estate Services. Pleasure to be here and do this presentation for you. We have been looking at the acquisition of a 37-acre property that is adjacent to Silver Falls State Park. This property, oops, sorry about that. The wrong thing popped up. Get my maps back up there. Apologize. This property consists of approximately 37 acres of land, a home, and several outstructures. The home will serve as employee housing. Current employee housing within the park that exists today is in need of replacement. So this will meet those needs of replacing our employee housing there. The property is having the due diligence activities done on it. The sellers reached out to us to see if we were interested in it. We had attempted to acquire it about 6-7 years ago, and they were the successful buyer, but as they plan to move, they have reached out to us to see if it is still would meet our needs. We wanted to bring this forward to make everyone aware that this activity is going on and to see if you have any questions.
Great. Any questions? Any comments? Seems like a great acquisition for our needs in the park, between housing and outbuildings to store equipment and access to the highway. So thank you very much for all your work on this, both of you. Commissioner Berger.
One quick comment. As the new staff or the new commissioners are onboarded, I hope you're going to schedule another look at the North Silver Falls project as whole and how this fits in it, because it's huge.
Yeah.
And I just want to make the new commissioners have eyes on.
As long as you'll come.
Oh, it's right down the street.
Okay, then.
We'll send out a special invitation to her.
Awesome. Well, this is just an informational item, so we're not going to take action on it today. So unless there's any further questions, let's move on. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Tub Springs with Tabitha, who's in the room.
Apologies. I don't see my maps handy, but I have them in my pocket. Mm-hmm. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, Commissioners. My name is Tabitha Henriksen with the Real Estate Services Group for OPRD. Today I'm bringing you a possible transfer of Tub Springs State Wayside to the Bureau of Land Management. This is a property that is about 40 acres. It's a wayside. It includes a restroom, some historic water tubs, that has been a site that has been a rest area for travelers for many, many years, including along the Applegate Trail. So it has a long history. It is currently located within the boundary of the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument. You can see it indicated here on their map as a restroom location. And you can see the footprint, I believe, has even been expanded. My understanding is to include more of this area recently. That we believe that this would be a good home for this property, that the federal ownership could potentially provide historic protections as well as providing closer management. Right now, the property is being managed by Jackson County under an agreement. I spoke with one of the staff today who said there was another incident where it was vandalized recently. So unfortunately, there's just not enough eyes out there regularly. We are very hopeful that incorporating it into the National Monument officially and transferring that ownership to BLM has potential to make sure that it is well cared for, that there's potential for use of the site for interpretive purposes and several other things that BLM has proposed. They would love to see an approval by the commission so that they can move forward with expending some additional project costs for their due diligence process that's defined for their land acquisition. So they will be doing some environmental testing and some other site test that they will incur costs for, and they want to make sure they have your approval and support before they spend that money. So I would like to hear any questions you may have about this proposal.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dewar.
Yeah, thank you. I like this and support it. And I appreciate all the work you've done to get to this point. And ordinarily, transferring property to a national monument might not trigger these kinds of questions, but I do know that this monument has sometimes been discussed as one where the boundaries could be revisited in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So do we have a reversionary clause potentially built into this that could anticipate that very improbable, but still not impossible?
That was our intention as a non-monetary compensation here. There will be a reversionary clause in place for outdoor recreation.
Right. So. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Commissioner Grassi.
Is it completely surrounded by federal land?
It is not completely surrounded by federal ownership at this point. There is some private ownership on several sides of the property. It's a lot of federal ownership across the highway from there, and some in the adjacent area, but there is still private ownership as well.
I would consider a motion if somebody wanted to make one. No one wants to take the. Okay.
I move approval of transfer of this property to the Bureau of Land Management and authorize PRD director to sign all necessary instruments effectuating the transactions. This is another one we've worked on an awful long time for these 40 acres. And we are, according to our disposition policy, moving it to a stable like mission partner who will manage and are capable of managing properties in a like manner, which is in our disposition policy that we just approved.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Second. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Izumi. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Tabitha, for all your due diligence on this and work over the last years.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Well, I have one more for you. So item 5I is regarding a Willamette River Greenway.
5H, sorry.
5H is regarding a Willamette River Greenway parcel. I did include some in the brief, basically background about basically property asset transfer from ODOT to OPRD when we were formed as our own agency. That did happen over the a period of about a decade and a half. They were slowly inventorying which pieces of property they believed to be OPRDs and transferring those to us. With the Willamette River Greenway property specifically, they often wrote one deed that would be everything that they considered to be Willamette River Greenway property within a particular county, and then would list all of the source deeds that they acquired that land under. Unfortunately, with this piece, we find this occasionally. They transferred it within, this is on the Lynn and Lane County border, just south of Harrisburg. And they transferred to us the portion that is in Lynn County, but did not actually give us a transfer deed for the portion that is in Lane County on the other side of the river. So we have been managing this as though it is ours, and technically it is not. So ODOT has asked to remedy that, partially because they do not want to deal with an issue that's come up with, you know, some of the surrounding neighbors as we talk about how do we police maybe some use of the property that's questionable. But it will be much easier once we are sure that it is ours, and that also meets the restriction. This is obligated to National Park Service through the Land and Water Conservation Fund, so ODOT cannot hold on to it. They do need to make sure that it gets transferred to state parks. This is an item that is proposed for action today, which is an acceptance of basically a correction deed to remedy this.
Move approval.
We have a
I'll second it with a question.
Commissioner Grassi with the second.
The Does that name have any meaning? It's a strange name.
Blue Ruin Landing. I wish I knew the history of that. I will have to look it up. There are quite a few spots on the Willamette River Greenway that I have researched for my own reference, but this is not one of them, unfortunately.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments before we? Right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved. Thank you. All right, guys, we are going to take a break. How much time should we take for lunch? 30 minutes? 20 minutes? All right.
Short is good.
Let's do a 20-minute break for lunch, and we will come back around 12:07.
12:07. And don't think you're getting extra time for the bathroom.
Exactly. You better do it all. Start. All right. Thank you. Michelle, I think we have you up next, and we are on agenda item 6, which is community engagement. Rec Trails Program grant recommendations.
All right. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, can you hear me? Does this? Okay.
Yeah.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission. I am Michelle Scalise, the Grants and Community Programs Manager with OPRD. I am presenting item 6A on your agenda, the Recreational Trails Program, RTP, grant recommendations. Some background, the RTP committee met in a hybrid meeting in Salem on March 4th and 5th to review 28 projects, requesting over $2.9 million. I'm sorry. That's okay. 7 of the requests for motorized projects and 21 were for non-motorized projects. Okay. The committee has recommended funding 15 of the projects totaling $1,975,311 with the just over $2 million available to award. Whoops. Okay, here we go. The map shows the distribution of the awards across the state. Highlighted in blue are the non-motorized projects recommended for funding totaling $1,975,311, and the 4 recommended motorized projects totaling $706.15. Okay. So the action requested is I am requesting commission approval of the ranking and distribution of the grant awards as recommended by the RTP Advisory Committee and is detailed in exhibits A and B in the brief.
Thank you, Michelle. Any comments on these?
Thank your reviewers and your committee.
Will do. Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Thank you.
I move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. We have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second it. Is it both 6A and 6B? Is that right?
I'm going to be presenting 6B next.
Okay.
What I was referencing were the 2 different attachments.
Great.
Yeah.
A lot of work goes into these, so we are so grateful because it's actually really exciting to get to just approve money.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Somebody happy.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do appreciate Commissioner Berger's comments because without our committees volunteering a lot of time because these are very detailed applications, so they do a lot of thoughtful work into these. So yeah, they'll appreciate that message.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do a lot to get to this point. So thank you.
And it's always fun to sit in those and listen to the actual grant applications and what the communities are up to and what they're doing. So we can certainly let you guys know when that's happening so you can listen in or.
Yeah. They're usually always either remote or hybrid meetings. So you're welcome to join in person or join online. I'd invite anybody in their public meetings as well.
All right, all of those in favor of approving the RTP grant ranking and distribution as listed, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing none, so approved.
Thank you. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, again, for the record, I'm Michelle Scalise, Grants and Community Programs Manager at OPRD. I'm presenting item 6B on your agenda, the ATV program grant recommendations. Some background on this, the ATV subcommittee met in a hybrid meeting in Salem on March 21st to review 8 projects, requesting just over $818,000. The committee reviewed law enforcement applications, development, safety education, and emergency medical proposals. The map that you'll see in your packet and on the screen here shows the 8 projects recommended for funding, totaling that $818,718. I am requesting commission approval to award grants as recommended by the ATV Grant Subcommittee and is detailed in Exhibit A in the brief.
Commissioner Grasty?
So what are the color differences on the map?
Go back. So let me just, I should have brought my reading glasses up here. I believe.
Got you.
Here
it comes.
Here it comes. Thank you with my glasses. Let me get my map too. Okay. So the blue are sheriff, those are law enforcement. I believe that the green are those development projects. And the orange are both the, I think one was safety education and I think, yeah, both safety education under education category.
Thank you, and I'll move for commission approval of the ATV Grant Subcommittee's attached funding recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty.
Second.
Commissioner Berger with a second and a question.
You've not broken them down this way before. Is that what's new to us? By sheriff and training and development?
You know, that's the staff prepared this for me and I do like it that they broke it down this way. Yeah.
Read through and see how much are we paying for law enforcement?
Yes.
Somebody did it for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, I will pass that along to staff who prepared this brief and map. But I figured that you would like that. So thank you for the comment, Commissioner Berger.
And I do expect.
Okay. All those in favor of supporting the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Hearing none, so passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have agenda item 6C, Veterans and War Memorial Grants with Matt.
Chair Hill, Director Assumption, members of the commission. For the record, Matt Rippey with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. Sorry. I am here today with agenda item 6C, which is Veterans and War Memorials Grant Awards. The Veteran and War Memorial Grant Program was established in 2005 after the passage of House Bill 2739. And it's funding assistance for local governments working in partnerships with veterans organizations for the construction and restoration of veterans and war memorials located on public property throughout the state. And it's funded with OPRD lottery funds. There were 5 applications received and reviewed by the committee based on the established criteria. 4 out of 5 of those projects were conditioned for approval based on final commission approval. The first is City of Stanfield proposed to construct a monument in its existing Veterans Memorial Park honoring veterans from Umatilla County and from the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. The second is the City of Florence proposes to develop the Oregon Airport Memorial Gateway Park as an entrance to the Florence Airport. And the third is City of Kaiser proposes to install Gold Star Memorial in Ryan J. Hill Memorial Park to provide a place designated for families of fallen veterans. And the fourth was Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District plans to create a Revolutionary War Memorial within the Beaverton Veterans Memorial Park. There's a total of $300,000 allocated to this program. Out of that, these 4 projects will total $295,195. Because this is funded out of the local government program. That additional $4,005 will roll back into the local government grant program. Really like that. So the action requested is commission approval for the grant review committee's recommendations based on those 4 projects totaling $295,195.
Thank you, Matt. Do I have a motion on the table?
I will move approval, and thank you for continuing to work with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz to discuss redeveloping their proposal for future application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Grasty with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Hearing none, so approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this. Up next, we are on 7A, the Heritage Section update with Ian.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Ian Johnson. I am the Associate Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer with the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. This morning I'm presenting, or the afternoon, I'm presenting on Agenda Item 7A, the Heritage Section Report. The presentation is for information only. The brief in your packets includes information on recent listings in the National Register of Historic Places, an overview of activities of Oregon Heritage Committees, a summary of our annual Main Street Program Report, and an update of the revision of the Oregon Archaeology Field Guidelines. I'll take any questions at the end of my report here. The Juniper House in Portland, Oregon was added to the National Register of Historic Places this last February. Originally a 1902 single-family residence, it was converted in 1987 into Oregon's first HIV/AIDS end-of-life care home. The facility served a critical role from 1987 to 1989 during a time of heightened stigma and discrimination against individuals with HIV/AIDS. The Juniper House helped shape public discourse and inspired the creation of similar care homes across the state. The recognition marks a significant step in preserving the legacy of HIV/AIDS movement and the community care model that emerged from these grassroots efforts. Summarizing the work of some of our committees this last quarter, the State Advisory Committee on Historic Preservation, that's the group that approves nominations for listing in the National Register or recommends them to the National Park Service. They met in February. They did a tour of the Bonneville Power Administration substation, which has been since listed in the National Register. They reviewed 5 nominations at that meeting, and Oregon State archaeologist John Pauley presented on strategies for listing archaeological sites in the National Register. They'll be meeting again this June in Hood River. The Oregon Commission on Historic Cemeteries also met in February. They focused on implementing the Oregon Heritage Vitality Studies recommendations to strengthen community engagement and preservation outcomes. They also highlighted several events, including the Oregon Historic Cemeteries Grant and Spring Cleanup events in partnership with SOLVE, and that's aimed at bolstering public stewardship of cemeteries. They'll be meeting again on April 25th. The Oregon Heritage Commission met online on January 27th. A subcommittee introduced a resolution reaffirming commitment to Indigenous partnerships and cultural preservation. And staff also provided planning updates for the Virtual Heritage Summit, which was held last week, the Oregon Heritage Conference, which will be held in 2026, and Oregon's 250th statehood commemoration. That group coordinates a lot of the state efforts for that. The next hybrid meeting is in May. Some quick highlights on our annual report for the Oregon Main Street and Revitalization Grant and its statewide impact. The 2024 annual report is out. Some highlights, there was $24 million in private investment, 168 new businesses created with those grants, 1,652 jobs created, and 293 buildings rehabilitated. There was nearly 34,000 volunteer efforts put into those projects, and some notable outcomes include 92 buildings improved, 101 downtown housing units created, 12 long vacant buildings reopened, 5 ADA accessible improvements and 7 structural reinforcements that made the buildings sustainable and usable, and 31 restored facades. This grant's been running since 2015, and it's awarded funds in 4 cycles in 2017, 2019, 2022, and 2023, in 59 communities across the state, with grants ranging anywhere from $53,000 to $900,000. And finally, the Oregon Archaeology Guidelines are almost complete after 3 years of research and stakeholder coordination. The new guidelines are restructured around 5 key areas: state and federal cultural resource laws, research standards, field methods, National Register eligibility evaluations, and documentation standards. There's a fair amount of information detailing expectations for your report formats, maps, photos, and data submissions to the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office. It was developed with input from tribes, agencies, cultural resource firms, and academics to ensure that it's comprehensive and address the community's needs. The project aims to improve SHPO review efficiency, enhance consistency in archaeological determinations, and support legal compliance for development and preservation projects. And that's the end of my report. I can take any questions should the committee have them.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Grasty.
Thanks for all your work, and the Oregon Main Street programs have been a resounding success in Burns. One comment that might be of value into the future. I don't know how common this is, but I know we had at least 2 projects that had significant permitting and legal challenges. Perhaps a review of that and making the challenges, people aware of the challenges that those folks hit may help others in the future.
Okay, so review of local permits and okay, certainly we can note that. Thank you.
I'd like to make one other comment about the Main Street program. Roseburg is going through the process of re-engaging in the Main Street program, and I've heard amazing feedback from the business owners downtown about Sherry's support and navigating that. And that brings a smile to my face, and it's so cool to hear. I mean, I already know how amazing the staff is at OPRD, but to hear, some of these curmudgeon-y business owners in downtown Roseburg excited about the Main Street program and the opportunity that it brings to the community. So thank you. Thank Sherry for me and for everybody else within the Main Street program for the support of that community.
I'll certainly bring that back to the office. Thank you very much for that compliment. I will point out, I didn't include it in my report because of cutoff, but Sherry was recently nationally recognized for her effort in the Main Street program. So we're very lucky to have her here in the state.
We are. Yeah, big deal.
And this is Commissioner Durr. I appreciate everything you've been getting done. You've clearly been getting a lot done, and it's impressive. I just wanted to add to my fellow commissioners' comments and thank the staff for all the work on the Oregon Archaeological Guidelines, the very extensive outreach, meticulous work with a lot of partners, working with tribes and incorporating tribal perspectives into that process. So thanks to you and to John and to everybody else there who has contributed to that. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'll take that back to John. He's been working really hard on those.
I know. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Ian. Appreciate the update.
All right, thank you.
See you. Right, moving on to 8, Park Development Division and Collier Campground Entrance Improvement Construction Contract. Thank you. With Rob. Or he's on. I see him. There he is. I think he's there.
Good afternoon. Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and members of the commission. For the record, my name is Rob Morris, Engineering Lead for OPRD. I'm here today to present item 8A, the Collier Campground Entrance Improvements Construction Contract. A little bit of background on the project itself. The Collier Campground Entrance Project seeks to improve entry to the overnight camping area by providing a new paved roadway, parking area, storage building for staff use, registration kiosk, trash enclosure, vehicle access gates, and an RV dump station with a washdown area. All of these improvements will be constructed to meet ADA and OPRD's accessibility standards to the fullest extent possible. This project was initiated following the 242 complex fire in the fall of 2020, which destroyed some of the existing park infrastructure. And this project seeks to replace some of that infrastructure as well as make improvements. So back to where we are right now. Previously, staff had requested approval for the award of a construction contract over $750 a construction contract not to exceed $850,000. The project has gone out to bid, and the low bidder came in just over that mark at $875,000. Due to bid prices coming in higher than estimated, the staff is requesting an adjustment to the maximum contract authority, which accounts for this low bid price of $875,000 plus appropriate contract construction contingency. So the ask in this action requested is approval to proceed with execution of a construction contract not to exceed.
Okay.
We knew what he wanted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, looks like I got muted somehow.
We can't hear you, Rob.
We lost you somehow.
We're working on it on our end.
Can you hear me?
I can,
Try talking,
yeah.
Rob.
Yeah,
I can hear you guys. Can you hear
Sing
me?
to us. I don't know. Keep talking.
Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2.
Careful, you might come back on.
Testing 1, 2.
I hear you,
Anybody
Rob.
there? Can you hear me?
Right up to the question.
Exactly.
Is it appropriate to,
I think
do we
you
have
can.
questions? Or do we-
Questions. Yeah.
I would move approval if it's appropriate, but I don't want to do that if we're leaping ahead without Rob able to comment on details.
I don't have any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward, a little bit, and who's surprised that it came in high?
Yeah.
Hello.
See, Rob
Can you
agrees.
hear us, Rob? Can you hear us
I
again?
can, yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me at all, but
We have a motion and a second from Commissioner Dewar and Commissioner Berger. All those in favor of approving to proceed with executing a construction contract for Collier State Park not to exceed $1 million, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. Hearing none, approved. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
thank you if you can hear me. I apologize.
Totally validates your point, Jeff.
All right, rulemaking, agenda item 9A.
Maybe I shouldn't do this. This is gonna get confusing.
Assisted bicycles.
No,
Still.
We'll get this one done.
Yeah.
Hello, Chair Hill, Director Sumption, and the rest of the commission. My name is Jo Niehaus. I'm a policy advisor presenting to you agenda item 9A and requesting for you to adopt electric assisted bicycle rules today. I hope I've built up some exciting tension trying to get all 3 screens working.
We're just saying e-bikes.
Yes, very exciting. I know. There was a little tiny typo that I'm hoping I caught in the rest of these, so bear with me here. E-bikes, and when I say e-bikes, I do want to preface that with I mean electric assisted bicycles, not electric motorized dirt bikes, scooters, things like that. So our state park system has e-bike rules currently, and they have not been updated in about 7 years. And in those 7 years, we have seen quite a bit of innovation progress, adoption, rise in popularity, and some may say overuse or outside of the bounds of the current rules as they have been currently placed. So with that being said, we did the staff work has been happening on this rulemaking for over a year. There's been a lot of research, both from the external partners as well as internal. And in preparation of this rulemaking, we've done everything from multiple rule advisory committee meetings, a public survey, and a couple of different public hearings as well. Those are not electric assisted bicycles. No. Just a fun fact, the modern bicycle was first invented or claimed to have been invented in 1817 in Germany. And in less than 100 years, the patent for electric bicycles appeared in the US. So it was about 1890. And then those inventions faded due to popularity and things like motorcycles and motorbikes. And then they started regaining their popularity, and we've been seeing them quite a bit more in our parks in the last 10 years, and most rapidly probably in the last 3. Those are a lot of like anecdotal evidence. And as we kind of looked into this rulemaking, we looked at what other states are doing, what other agencies are doing within Oregon, what other park systems are looking at in terms of their own rules, and then what the public thought about it. And we realized there's not a lot of consistency. And some of the things that helped propel this rulemaking forward was the state adopted classification rules for electric assisted bicycles at the last legislative session. Those classifications haven't translated to the retail market, so it is difficult to determine what classification 1, 2, or 3 these bicycles belong to, making enforcement a little bit harder. And the way we looked at our rules, we looked at approaching it from that enforcement level of trying to determine by classification or not. And in the end, we decided to go with behavior over the specific equipment. And you'll see some of that later in the presentation. So our public comment, let me go back real quick to the background here. So the public comment period was held for a month from February to March. Last commission meeting, you allowed us to open. And during that time, we had about 165 comments come in and then 2 public hearings. That was for this slide. Some of the concerns that we received about this rulemaking really centered around potential conflicts, speed, trail impacts, existing recreation. And then there were people who were in favor of opening up more electric assisted bicycle access, citing that it helped them recreate more, access places where they wanted to go, especially with an ADA lens. It seemed to open up a lot of different places, and that classification was brought up quite a bit, but that it could be limiting. And these are just some of the rules that are continued. I will mention that that opposition typically revolved around safety and the potential for conflict between existing recreation and users. We received a lot of comments from the equestrian community, and I do want to disclose that I am also an equestrian, but I also ride bikes. So I'm even. I do walk, not in a straight line always. I try to do all of the things, and I'm not good at any of those things, but I try. And it was really interesting getting the opposition comments from equestrians. We had a representative from the Oregon Equestrian Trails on our rack, and they were really helpful in helping us go through some of the reasons why there could be issues. That there's already some trail conflict and navigation with hikers and equestrians, dogs on leashes or not on leashes and equestrians, other bicycles, etc. So really it became a conversation around that behavior. Adding electric assisted bicycles to the mix does complicate things because they do tend to be quiet or quieter, and that they can come up pretty quickly, both surprising the rider and the horse, and maybe even the cyclist as well. So with all of that in mind, there were a lot of comments with consideration around places where there could be an increase for these potential conflicts to arise. And I do want to bring attention to the Appendix E, not E. Appendix D, That is a public comment sent in by our representative who was on our Rules Advisory Committee. And it is just so well written and heartfelt and really covered what we had talked about in the Rule Advisory Committee meetings and highlighted the concerns from the equestrian community really well. So I couldn't even rephrase her better than the way that she had cited herself. So I wanted to include that in there. And in it, she synthesizes the number of park properties that we currently have. Of those, how many are open to equestrian use? Of those, how many equestrians even use? Because even though they're available to them, it may not make sense for them because of their conditions or where they've been putting in work, et cetera. And then of those park properties, which they are most concerned about if electric assisted bicycles were also allowed on these multi-use trails. So in looking at that, they narrowed it down to 3 properties. And they're all in the Valley region area, close to metro areas. And because part of this rulemaking is going to require a little bit of an implementation period for us internally, the request was in there to make sure that we work closely with our partners who are there present, utilizing the parks, even oftentimes like having adopt a park agreements or doing volunteer work and making sure that they're really the stewards of these trails, that they're involved in those communications and that we're not making wholesale decisions about what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how fast people are going, and then ignoring some of the concerns that they have. So I thought that was a really well put together ask, and it was echoed during the meetings that we had. We heard it over and over in the public hearing. So I wanted to make sure that I took a little bit of time in the presentation to you today to know that that was a concern, and that opening up the trails for existing recreationists is always a little bit of let's wait and see, and maybe that there's a little bit of apprehension around the potential conflicts, but that we're open to making sure that we are accessible to all different types of recreation, and that's been important. So with that being said, our current rules only allow for e-assisted bicycles on paths and trails that are 8 feet or wider. So the proposed rules do open that up to anywhere bicycles are currently allowed. So this doesn't mean that you can now take an e-bike and go on a hiking trail where bicycles are not allowed. But if they are already allowed, then you can also take your e-assisted bicycle. They would be prohibited in certain areas, and those are outlined in the rule, whether it's because of safety or resource impacts. And that there was a concern about the way that the safe passage language was already in there. So we bolstered that a little bit. We made sure also to include equestrians in that language specifically. And then we clarified the ADA use of e-assisted bicycles. So that's outside of just being able to use a wheelchair. And you'll notice too that you have 2 different divisions in front of you. That's because we have 2 separate rules for e-bikes for our parks and then for the Ocean Shore. So in Division 21 for the Ocean Shores rules, currently e-bikes are only allowed where you can drive on the beach. And a lot of e-assisted bicycles, they actually don't go very fast. And people on those bicycles don't necessarily want to be riding with cars and traffic. Some do, and some make great commuters, but in terms of recreation and on the beach, this is a different type of use. So the proposed rule looks to extend e-assisted bicycles onto the Ocean Shore and allowed on wet sand areas where they are designated. The Ocean Shore is a complex place, and we have a lot of different land use agencies and responsibilities. So we would also have to work closely with our Forest Service partners and make sure that they're not going into places where they're not supposed to be, especially during like endangered species seasons like the snowy plover nesting seasons, and making sure that our beach rangers know too, like where our jurisdiction begins and ends and where someone else's starts. So the staff recommendation is to adopt the proposed rules as they are, and during implementation, be really careful and make sure that we're engaging with potential partners who may be interested, and involve the partner groups in implementation conversations. The date in rule right now is July 2025. That gives us time towards the end of the biennium to order new signage, look at our maps. Our communications team has already been working on this, and to work with park managers and district managers to review their properties to see what areas would be appropriate, would not be appropriate. And then for that, we would have to make sure that we're reviewing this rule, just like any other type of new innovation and technology that comes into the parks, where maybe we weren't prepared for or are trying to catch up. We want to be more proactive than that. So as this rule goes into place, to really see and understand, is this really driving up safety issues? Are we having more collisions? Is there something we can do about reducing speed? And if we need to make sure that we come back and readdress this rule quickly. So with that, I am requesting that we adopt the following rules. Do I need to read all of them?
No, if you can.
Okay.
As reflected on your screen.
As reflected on my screen. Thank you. I'd like to thank council for that. There are many. And to update and clarify where electric assisted bicycles can safely recreate at state park managed properties and the ocean shore. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Do you have any questions? Commissioner Grasty?
Comment really. Thanks for all your work. Holy mackerel, that's a lot of work to get to where you're at and where we're at. As an e-bike owner, I will always go down. They are motorcycles, period. They may be quiet, but they're very fast and very powerful today. One of the things I bet you're already thinking about that I hope you'll track for the commission into the future is those conflicts and or collisions as best you can. What's this look like as time goes along? You know, hopefully it's not much of an issue, but who knows? And I'd make the motion as requested on that screen.
Thank you, Commissioner Grasty. I'll entertain a second and then we can continue comments.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Cribbins. Commissioner Condor had a question. He has his hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering did we ever, is there anything where we incorporated like kind of like
Joel, we can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
1 second.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Commissioner Condor, we still can't hear you, so I'm going to move on to Commissioner Berger and then we'll come back to you, okay?
All right.
Yeah. This is interesting because when we started this, when we did the first rulemaking, you know, I didn't even know what an e-bike was, and I couldn't imagine that anybody that would want to ride a bike would want it motorized.
Yeah.
Hello,
And
boy.
And we got another one.
Man. So I'm happy to see that we're advancing along. We now have a definition. We now kind of know what they are, but we don't know what the next thing will be. It will be something and we'll be dealing with it. But I think we have a really good framework here. And this is a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. I would just like to add an extra thank you to Commissioner Grassi. He was part of our Rule Advisory Committee meeting, and I know we threw a lot of meetings at you, sir. So really appreciate you being part of that. And like you took a little bit of an ex officio role, and I think that was a really good way for commissioners to get involved. So for future rulemakings, if you are interested, let us know. I think it's fun, and you get to have a front row seat to what we do.
Great. Is Commissioner Condor able to?
Can you hear me now?
Speak?
You can't hear me.
We still can't hear you.
Okay.
Great.
Basic rule where it states that e-bike drivers operate their vehicle in a safe and prudent manner.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Condor, thank you for that question. We do go into detail in Division 21 about what safe operation of the electric assisted bicycles look like on the ocean shore. We also have other rules that dictate that they can't harass wildlife or be reckless. So we do make references to those rules as well.
Go ahead, Commissioner Izumi.
Yeah, thanks so much for all of this work. I'm a big fan of e-bikes because they allow people who wouldn't necessarily be able to get up on a bike out and recreating. Just a couple of comments. Well, one comment and a question. You already mentioned that your communications team is working on public education, and I just want to say that that is so important. I was riding my bike recently and on
Columbia Historic Highway.
Thank you. Columbia Historic Highway. And an e-bike user was just zipping past me just really quickly. And I was on my regular bike and I came up behind a couple walking their dog. And I tried to alert them that I was on their left, but they couldn't hear me because the traffic was so loud. And I wasn't going that fast, but I really spooked the dog. And so I think that like I can imagine with horses, the situation can be really dangerous too. But having media, public education that includes like a mock scenario of like, whoa, like what can really happen if you come up quickly behind a horse or a dog, I think is important. So I appreciate that that's already part of the plan. And then also just a question, I'm wondering, well, since we were talking about Tuvel this morning, I can imagine, that there could possibly be like tours on the beach of many e-bikes going up and down the shore. And I just have concerns about that because it's like disruptive and it, interferes with the enjoyment of people walking along the beach, makes the sand look bad and on and on. So have there been any conversations about how to prevent that type of, business operating on the beach with e-bikes?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Izumi. That is a really good one. And yes, in fact, on our Rules Advisory Committee, we had a e-bike shop / tour business owner from the Oregon coast. So your question is super apt for the work that we did and the conversations that we had. Those are real concerns, whether they're e-bikes or we have horse concessionaires or even regular bikes, buggies, all kinds of things. So if we have opportunity for those types of commercial, we'll call them partnerships because that's one of my favorite words, then it gives us an opportunity to work with them to figure out a situation where they can operate and kind of help us be stewards of that part of the ocean shore, where we can start to develop really good relationships with them. If it starts being a problem, we need to look at the way we work with our commercial use and our concessionaire agreements and make sure that we have the ability to exert a little bit more control over what's happening, regardless of, I think one of the questions that came up earlier was like whether cash is exchanged on hand or not. Some of those things are part of policy and rule changes we were talking about for this coming year and next. The legislation that's ongoing right now will have a big impact on that. So those conversations have been paused for now until we understand better how that's all going to roll out. But at the end of the day, what we do know is that our commercial use policies and rules do need to be updated. As part of that, we do want to maintain really good relationships and partnerships. And it's almost always felt the same way on the other side. I won't say every time, but those good relationships also help them become more visible and be able to get more business, so that it's sort of a symbiotic relationship that we have. And having somebody who is directly impacted by that sort of business on our Rule Advisory Committee was really helpful in us understanding that they can't really operate either if the rules are wishy-washy or unclear, or if they don't understand how we are planning on approaching enforcement. So, thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Thank you, Joe, very much for your work on this and the long-term effort on it. I appreciate it. I'll just note that the slight awkwardness I feel with so much comments expressing concern. I appreciate that the RAC did a lot to anticipate those comments and kind of respond to them preemptively. I do think a lot hinges on implementation and of course the discretionary authority of park staff to respond to emerging threats and challenges as they come up. It's the flexibility written into the rule, I think, that gives me some comfort knowing that those concerns that have been expressed are in many cases very legitimate concerns. But we still have the sort of a nimble tool here to respond to those kinds of concerns and to respond, I think, fairly quickly with adjustments. And so implementation will be very important. I'd hate to see more collisions or other kinds of user conflicts associated with this rule. But again, seeing how it's been constructed, seeing that possibility to respond to those challenges makes it a little easier to go forward and approve this, recognizing that the voices of opposition actually outnumbered the voices in support by some measure. So, but I appreciate your efforts to sort of preemptively respond to those in the way you design the rule. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will ask for a vote. So all of those in favor of updating and clarifying electric assisted bicycles rulemaking signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Hearing no opposition, it's approved. Congratulations.
Good job. Commissioner Crosby.
All right. 9C, adopt temporary rule ATV sound and safety with Katie.
Chair Hill, Director Sumption, members of the commission, Katie Gauthier here with agenda item 9C. And this is a request to adopt a temporary rule for ATV sound and equipment standards. And background, as we mentioned this morning, House Bill 2232 was enacted effective March 19th. And this legislation transfers rulemaking authority for ATV safety equipment and noise level standards to OPRD. And as we learned more about what that meant, law enforcement can cite under ORS 821-040, but it references rules adopted by Department of Environmental Quality and Oregon Department of Transportation. And I was notified by Oregon Department of Transportation that they felt that they no longer had authority for those rules as soon as that statute went into effect. So they were repealing their rules, but it didn't really matter. They no longer had any authority over those rules. So in order for law enforcement to continue to cite under that statute, we needed to adopt new rules. We have already started talking about adopting permanent rules, but need the temporary rules in the meantime in order to continue to have this enforcement of the current standards. So the temporary, we're developing a RAC. The temporary rules, as the requirement for temporary rules, will allow our law enforcement partners to continue enforcement. It is in the interest of ATV riders and the general public that sound and safety equipment standards can be maintained until a permanent rule is adopted. The temporary rules that are proposed continue the exact same rules that are in place currently, so we didn't make any changes. We copied verbatim the ODOT safety equipment rules because those are going to be repealed and taken out. DEQ doesn't have a sound program, so they aren't going to change any of their rules. We just reference their rules in place, and then as we develop a rule advisory committee, we can figure out how to word and reference those rules in the future. We have spoken with the ATV community. We'll develop a rule advisory committee that includes ATV riders, law enforcement, members that live near ATV riding communities, and have a very broad discussion about sound levels and safety equipment between now and October, when the temporary rule will no longer be in effect. So the request is to add 2 new rules as presented for 180 days to continue safety and sound equipment rules until they can be adopted permanently.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Any comments?
I move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Dewar. We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you,
And
Commissioner
I have a
Grassi.
question
Yes, please.
or comment. So thanks for the explanation about where the temporary rules came from. I found it interesting reading them that talks about required windshield wipers if you have a windshield. And I can tell you that plastic windshields and wipers do not work. And so I hope you address that as you get to the permit.
We actually, that was legislation last year, 2023. We worked to, because it used to be you had to have them for any windshield. We did work to change it legislatively so that if you have a half windshield, you don't have to have wipers. There's some technical things, and you now only have to have wipers if you're on a road. But yeah, we can look at addressing some of that. That was definitely some feedback we received from ATV riders.
I have a very expensive windshield on my side-by-side, and I would kill anybody touched it with a windshield wiper because it would destroy it.
Yes, we have worked on that legislatively, but if we can do anything in rule, we'll work on it.
Any other comments? Okay. I have a motion. So all those in favor adopting, I'm not going to say all of it, but the request on the screen as presented for 180 days or until permanent rules can be adopted, signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, no. Hearing no objections, so pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the rest of the items on the agenda are just for information only. So I'd like to take some time to recognize our commissioners who are leaving us, Commissioner Grassi and Commissioner Dewar.
Come on for a third term.
This is always the hardest part, and now I've been in this.
Vicky's still here. That's what
And I've been in this seat long enough that I've done it so many times, but.
That hurts me bad.
I hate to break it, but we're all replaceable.
Oh,
some are harder, definitely. But the two of you are going to be really hard. It is. I was telling the 2 new commissioners at their Senate confirmation hearing, I'm like, they'd never met, right? And it was similar for the 2 of you, right? Like, and all of a sudden you realize that you're traveling 5 times a year, right? You're traveling more than you do with your own families, and you create this bond that you never even knew you were going to experience. And so it has been really incredible to have both of you and your experience, your expertise, your background. I love the way that you push this commission to think about things differently and bring different perspectives. You navigated through the agency's probably some of our most difficult history. You were here while we closed the system. You were here while we reopened the system. You're here watching us financially go through turmoil yet again, but your steady leadership and you're just you staying at the table and having the dialogue. And it's going to be really hard to have you not here, both of you. This is the hardest part.
Thank you. Thank you. I will miss every one of you, truly, and encourage all of you to reach out.
You know, I gotta say how great it's been to meet all the staff, and this department has wonderful staff, and thank you very much for all your time and effort and all that staff that's not here as well. I was trying to be careful today because I didn't want to be the one that made all the motions. I always want that to move ahead. Somebody make a motion so we can take action. But I think this department has some real opportunities. And working closer with counties and cities, I think, is one of those. I said it earlier, but figuring out a way to market to the Boise Valley and get more involved in Eastern Oregon is an opportunity that I just think we can't pass. I just spent $440 to have my rig shuttled from a parking lot that has 40 to 60 rigs in it every day and no revenue, no cost for doing it. And there's a revenue opportunity and some service opportunity there. I continue to worry that this, I don't know any other agency that buys housing for its employees. And it worries me a little bit. It's one of the investments that we've done that I've wondered if it was justifiable, and not argued against it ever, but think about that. It's a huge expense, and it never goes away. Expense you're always going to have. But more than anything, I'm proud to have been a part of this commission, and proud to know each and every one of you, and as I said, the staff. So thank you very much for this experience.
Thank you for being willing to serve.
I just want to say I'm so grateful that I got onto the commission while you both were here, and Vicky as well. I mean, she's not leaving us yet, thank goodness, but I have learned so much from both of you, and your thoughtful comments in protecting your own corners of the state of Oregon has really helped me think through how we thoughtfully approach some of these some not so controversial, but some very controversial issues to better ensure representation for the state and better usage of our parks for the people who live in Oregon. And, you know, I every time we talk about an issue, it resonates in the back of my head, like, is Eastern Oregon, are the folks in Eastern Oregon benefiting from this? Are they not? How is this affecting rural communities and folks that aren't necessarily always represented in state agencies generally across the state? And same with the coast. I mean, there is a complete set of unique issues and overusage of parks along the coastline. And you have a diverse group of users, from environmental groups to homeowners who live on the ocean shore, and trails and parks and all sorts of unique issues that don't necessarily resonate with the rest of the state. And your voice for the entire coast has been so incredibly helpful. And it's not just the coast, it's tribal communities, it's the heritage piece of different things, the archaeological piece that you bring to these meetings that aren't necessarily at the forefront of our minds all the time. And so your voice has really helped instill in me as well to have those same questions, and I think for others on the commission too. So thank you very much. Thank you. You guys will both be missed quite a bit, but we'll still call you. So
How many racks do you want to be on?
We have a lot of rules to get opening.
You want to explain these?
So we've had a practice of, as our commissioners are outgoing, that we provide beautiful pictures from around the state, and we try to give you places that aren't necessarily places you would normally visit because they're in your congressional district or your seat. And you two are recipients of the last two that Chris Havel did, and he came up with incredible inspirational quotes that we all thought of and thought that reminded us of you. And so that is just a special gift to constantly remind you of your time on the commission.
I have to have the attorney check that. Counselor.
You're good. It's affordable framing. It says right on the bag.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We need to get pictures of you guys with those. And you know, while Cindy's sitting in the room, I think the thing that does get lost is how much time you guys sacrifice from your families to do this. So thank you. You're here and we can say that, but thank your family as well. And I know that's getting harder for you too with your husband. And it's a big commitment to ask folks to be here, but it's super important that you are here and in the community. And so just thank you to your families and loved ones for allowing you to travel so often with us to deal with controversial issues.
And last but not least, our OPRD director has over 25 years of state
26.
service. 26. So I want to make sure we presented to you some recognition. I think Commissioner Berger said it so eloquently earlier. I mean, your impact not only to the state, but the nation in terms of education and your experience and building up this amazing team that supports others, not only in the state, but nationally, is amazing to see and makes all of us so proud to be a part of this work. So thank you, and we hope we can keep you for a little bit longer too, so please don't.
At least 4 years.
So anyway, we wanted to make sure that you were recognized for that.
Yes, thank you. Honored to be recognized with the two of you. But I do want pictures of you guys with us, please.
Yes, so with that.
One thing real quick, while Josh, Danny, Susan, the folks that actually toured us yesterday, it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of stress, because for Josh, this is probably the first time you've ever been at a commission meeting, right? Like, and it's a lot of anxiety. They're like, what? I think Trish said yesterday when we were at Two Bell, she's like, my calendar says big wigs here, make everything look good, right? Like, it's a big deal to them. And so I just want to say thank you, because not only did you have us out there touring, you were as eloquent as you could be around some very challenging conversations and community discussions that you all endure. And then the extra time yesterday, for those of you who went, we were able to go out to Wolf Creek and to Golden, and just to have that kind of time together was really special, and better understand the challenges our staff see, because I think everyone's always like, oh, it's state parks, it's fun. They have really hard things they have to deal with. And so it was very nice for you guys to get to see a little bit of that. So I just want to express my gratitude for all your hard work, and great job. Thank you. Well, please tell Nathan and Trish as well, and Dave. Dave spent the entire day with us, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
Good
With
night.
that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you. Yeah, let's
Pictures,
get some
yes.
photos.
Of all of you together. These are really, if Chris Howell was here, he'd be like, this wall is not.